change is coming, whether we like it or not. The political climate is changing here in the UK. The rise of the Reform Party is undoubtedly one of the hottest topics in political news at the minute. We want to spend a bit of time today talking about what this means for businesses, what it means for us, and also what it could mean for the future of the United Kingdom. Right, biggest news of the political week. Obviously, we've had a massive by-election. We've had a lot of councils have a new vote to who they want to be running their local councils, and Reform has absolutely dominated the elections. They've also won a seat in Runcorn, which was an incredible win by literally only 6 votes, which is the narrowest margin in recorded history. So literally 6 people. It just goes to show sometimes how actually important it is when people say, I'm not going to bother voting, how important it actually is to get yourself out there and vote for the leaders of the country.
The thing is as well, which is even more mental, is I think there was about 100 votes that were discounted or discredited because either people ticked 2 boxes or the line was too faint or whatever it might have been, God knows. But yeah, for about 100 votes were just completely discounted because people had cocked it up one way or another, which just, again, 6 votes. But they had to do a recount anyway, so, and I'm sure it was a Labour council before, so if there was going to be any sort of, dodgy stuff going on with ballot papers, Labour aren't going to do it to make Reform win by 6 votes. So, it just shows you it's going to have been completely legit.
Goes to show that, doesn't it? Because some people, and I've always felt like this, and whether it's a fair assumption to have, obviously we live in a democracy, which means it's fair. Everybody has the right to vote once they reach legal voting age and they obviously register. But for me, if you're going to cast a vote, and you haven't even got the ability to mark a piece of paper with a line correctly, to the point it's getting discounted, you shouldn't be voting. And I do genuinely believe, for me, that there should be a basic competency test performed prior to the vote. I don't think anybody should be able to vote. I think that, for me, the way I always saw things was, and I remember this being never more true during Brexit, when everyone made so many assumptions about Brexit, about what would happen, about what it is, what will it lead to if we were to leave, if we were to stay. And obviously Nigel, now the leader of the Reform Party, he was the leader of the, anti-Brexit, get it out of there, or for Brexit, sorry, anti-EU, get us out of the EU and get our sovereignty back. And he did his job. And there's no arguing that he's a compelling guy, and he understands how to read the current climate of the country and read the current mindsets that people have towards certain subjects, and then use it to really appeal to people and get them to vote for what he wants. But with the Brexit thing, and with the competency when it comes to voting, I think there should be a basic, nothing too ridiculously difficult, but a basic Q&A about the party that you're voting for and some of their legislation, or what you're voting for and the legislation, because people just have, unfortunately nowadays, a blanket opinion on a particular party, and I'll go, I'm just voting for them. That's what I believe in. And it's like, oh, tell me about a few of their policies. Well, I don't know. Or what's in their manifesto? Well, I don't know. I haven't looked. Right, well, what are you voting for then? Well, just like Labour. Well, what about them? Well, the party for the people, they give back. I'm like, oh, what do they give back? Well, I don't know. So you're voting for something. You don't even have a clue what you're talking about. And same goes for every party. It's not just Labour. That's also for Conservatives. It's also for Reform. It's also for whether leave or stay in Brexit. And you've just got people that get hoodwinked and fooled into voting for a particular party with no knowledge of what they're actually voting for. And as much as we live in a democracy, the way I would see it is that we would have a basic Q&A or some form of quick test for even mental aptitude for some of these people that can't even squiggle a fucking line on a graph to be able to get a clear answer, and they're getting it wrong.
Well, in the States, they want, I think one of the main ones is like Vivek, and he was saying that he wants, like a test on the Constitution and test on, American values and a test on this before you are eligible to vote. And he's kind of pushing those things. So to have something like that in the UK would be massive. I mean, I was doing a bit of a deep dive on research the other day, and apparently if you live within a Commonwealth country, if you then live in the UK, you're able to vote without actually becoming a citizen, something along them lines. And I was like, that is some mad statistic. Like, what? Surely you've got to be a citizen, but apparently not.
Well, we had one recently, didn't we? Where there's a member of our team, love him to death, brilliant guy, massive. Well, he's come from overseas, come from India, massive heart, really gives back to the community, gives back, pays his taxes, coming to this country the right way and does a brilliant job. But the most recent elections, he'd only been here for a few years, and he was able to vote. And he said, "Oh, I'm off to vote." And I said, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to vote on the election." And I said, "There's no way you're allowed to vote." And I was just saying that. I was just shocked and surprised that someone that's not even a citizen within the country, doesn't have a British passport, was able to go and vote on the general election. And I was absolutely mind blown that was the case. Now, nothing against him, nothing against, he knows, and we know, I said it to him, that we love him. He's bloody brilliant at what he does. And hopefully, if he does choose to stay here long term, that would be an option that's made available to him because of the contributions that he makes to the country. So there's no issue there. But until that has been done and completed and is at least spent a good enough period of time here, should you be able to vote? I found it incredible that was a possibility.
Well, we go back to 6 votes. Like 6. You needed 7 of those people that are just, like you're saying, don't really have a clue. They're kind of just, oh, well, mates vote for them, so I'll just vote for them as well. And it's like, already, you've just had a member of parliament in that shouldn't really be there, because the will of the people that live within the country and are citizens haven't actually chose that path. And it's mad. It's
a joke. And like I said, I think having that basic competency would help, at least, with a lot of these issues. Now, I think really going back to, obviously, the current climate, as I said, with
fantastic,
reform.
Isn't it?
Well, it's interesting. I think we've got reform, and it's clear to see that the Reform Party is surging. And now, whether it's true or not, I think like I said back to the beginning, what Nigel has been really, really good at doing is understanding the narrative, understanding the mindset of the people, and feeding into that, creating a bit of fear around it, creating some of the pain points that is a result of that current mindset, and then using it to push a political agenda. And the reality is, what he says to us, and, I think really this is where you have to kind of understand that all political parties say the same things. They all say Britain first. They all say we're trying to achieve this. We're trying to achieve... No party's coming in saying, well, we're just trying to make the country worse.
We're trying to screw it up.
Yeah, we're trying to really screw everyone over. Everybody has their own way of doing things, and the way that the Reform Party is really gaining traction at the minute is this current mindset towards immigration, and that we are losing control of Britain. We are losing our heritage. We're losing our culture. We're losing British values, and we're losing it to this mass immigration that we're seeing, and he's using that as a real talking point for his party. So, first question really on that actual point is, do you think the immigration that's occurring is damaging British values?
Yes, because they don't have British values. Or not. See, this is where I kind of come from it, and that if someone comes in, I don't care what they look like, I don't care anything other than if they come in and they say, I've wanted to live in Britain my whole life, I love the culture, like I love the people, I love the money, I love this, I love that, anything like British, I love being chivalrous, I love the rule of law, and love all these things, and say, I want to go through the process, I want to become a citizen, and then becomes a citizen. We want as many of them people in as we can possibly get. But if you get people in that just say, oh, well, I want to go to Britain because I get free healthcare, I'll get like all these, everything's tilted towards me. I get a free house, I get, free,
telephone was one
free
of them,
telephone,
free
free internet, free, like pretty much more than, say, our own veterans would get. I mean, we've got veterans that, like in America, that live on the street, and it's like we can't house them, but we can house, migrants, and it just doesn't make sense to me. But they're coming in because they want to benefit their own life, whereas someone else that might come in from the first example that wants to actually add to the country and benefit the country.
It's a tough one because in the main agree. I genuinely do. I always try and play devil's advocate on these sorts of things because, there's this globalist mindset and globalist agenda that's being pushed out at the minute. Whereas, why shouldn't it just be come one, come all? We're all humans. Let's all let everybody live wherever they want to live and do whatever they want to do. But I mean, that just leads to anarchy and chaos. And the reality is, as humans, we've evolved over time as tribal creatures, and we always have our own tribes, and we generally tend to thrive in those tribes and create sort of kingdoms, create countries, and we then bestow a set of values and a set of rules and guidelines within that country that has borders to maintain that particular tribe's mindset. And we've done so many videos on building a team. We've just done one on leadership, where it's so important to be able to create a set of values within a tribe or within a business that meets the values or meets the expectations of the people within it. So if we run a business and we all say that we love the colour green, that is, everything is to be green, we love green, green's the best, and then somebody comes in and says, I hate green, I hate it, I like red, immediately you've now got this friction of going, right, well, hold on a minute, okay, so what are we doing then? There's 100 people in this team that we're all coming together because we love green, and now you hate it, so you like red, so what do we do? And the two mindsets between it are, and I'm using such a really simple, silly idea there, because it could be something where it might be towards abortion, which is a massive one. But the reality is, it's still the same. So we go back to green and red, and it's this point. It's like, what do? Do you cater to the one person, and then sort of say, right, well, we're going to become all-encompassing and say we like people that like the colour red and then the colour blue? Or do you thrive better as a society where you all have this commonality, where you all follow the same set of rules, guidelines, you all follow the same values, and that drives your company or your country forward, which is what we've seen. Because if you're a country that's then divided, where you lot like this, you lot like that, you lot like this, we're all different, you're pulling in different directions, you're going this way, you hate that, but you love this, you hate that. And now we've become such this mixing pot of different values, mindsets, ideas. And you've got the one side who's saying, oh yeah, but that's fine, we should all be inclusive and let everybody live together, and who cares about British values, who cares about where we've come from and our culture and our history, our heritage, and to hell with all of that, let's just bring everybody in and let it all be one massive party. And it's like, it's only going to lead to chaos, because you're going to have some people that are sort of fighting against one set of values, and then other people are fighting against another set of values, and it just leads to war. It literally will lead to civil war and chaos.
Well, this is what I mean. You're carrying on with the same analogy. So you've got 100 people that love the colour green, one person that loves the colour red. As that one person that loves the colour red, you've got two choices, haven't you? Really, you either stay on your own, loving the colour red, and you're just isolated, or you assimilate and you kind of go, you know what, I kind of like the shade in between, like a bit of orange, whatever the colour is. But you kind of get in halfway, and then over time you're kind of going to assimilate into believing and being aligned with the other people, because as a human you want to be in with a tribe, so that's your only choice. Whereas what we're doing is we're not only getting one person that loves the colour red, we're getting equally another, say, 25 people that love the colour red in. And you got 100 people that love green. And then all the people that love red, they don't assimilate anymore because they don't need to. So they just congregate together and say, we're going to just love red over here, and we're just going to be the red team, and they can be the green team. And then you got two different camps under the same roof. And they're not aligning. So then you've got different communities then that sprout up. So when more people come that align with all the red team, you get more people on the red, and then you kind of get the green. And then that's what you're saying. You get the divide of two different groups with two different complete ideologies.
And there's benefits to that, where we're all different people. And the question becomes, do we then just scrap our entire value system, our entire culture, our entire heritage, and say, well, do you know what? Let's all just do what we want. Let's all just do as we please. Who cares? Who cares about Britain? Who cares about countries? Who cares about British values? And let's all just do what we want to do. And for me, I just don't see as that being how I would want things to be. I think that there is a real beauty in history. There's a real beauty in our history and our culture and individual decisions and choices that people make in life, because we are all different. No one person is the same, but we can all be aligned on a set of values. And just like a team, again, whether you might be like a football team, but you might be pushing. Wrexham's a great one at the minute, where they've all just aligned now. They've received back-to-back promotions, and they're all aligned on the success of Wrexham and Wrexham doing well, and the team and the fans and the community, the stadium, the owners, they're all now aligned under this same mission and vision of trying to bring this once tiny football club into the mainstream. And they've achieved that and done it, and they've brought everyone along, but now they've all had to abide by these set of values. And look at how powerful it can be by having a community that are all behind this one set of values and aligned. So the minute you start diluting it and taking it away and just having this complete wish-wash mixed match of different people saying you can do what you want to do, we'll do what we want to do, and it just distorts and dilutes the values that were once held and that people literally fought and died for centuries. And we went through some of the worst periods of time in the last 100 years with World War I and World War II, where people were fighting for freedom, fighting for their country and fighting for the values. For all of us now to basically just say, whatever, cheers for sacrificing yourself, everybody, because everybody was affected massively by those two world wars. It was a global destruction of lives and of economies and infrastructure and everything, and everybody was negatively affected by it. And what we're saying now is, well, whatever, bollocks to all of that. Thanks for the sacrifice, but we're just going to knock all of the freedoms that you fought for and the values that you fought for and just say we're not bothering with it anymore. We're going to just do what everybody wants to do.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, with immigration, we've got to have immigration. We used to have a sensible policy before Tony Blair, and it was that we had about net 60-odd thousand people, as I recall, that would come into the country, and that's net, so people in, people out, what the balance is. And, again, using the example we started with, 100 people on the green team, one on the red, people are starting to assimilate, and, it's enough that there's that much of a population that these people just fit in, and they bring some of their own culture, which everyone loves all that. But when you get it's not a trickle, but it's a tidal wave. Like, last year, net was 1 million people. So, 1 million people. The population's only 68 odd million. So you got 1 million, but that's net. We had about 500,000 people that left, and then 1.5 million that came in. The net's 1 million, but really you've got 1.5 million of people that, probably aren't on the green team.
Where there's a swing in the opposite direction.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I get what you mean, and it's a sad day, but this is a thing now because we've got a bunch of leaders who are, by all accounts, taking a dump on British values and British culture, British heritage. What do you expect people to do? They're going, well, I'm not respected here. My mindset and my way of thinking is no longer valid and no longer respected. And this new wave of values is coming through. So I'm going to go where I can now join a new team that aligns with my values. And this is, again, this whole thing with the millionaires that are leaving, and everybody's complaining because it's something we can talk about, and we have talked about it, where the gap between the rich and the poor is growing. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. That's simply, we've talked about it in another episode where we discussed the economics and how these things work, but the basic is that the rich have afforded themselves the ability to buy assets that are increasing in value, and they're building businesses that people are continuously using on a global scale. And whenever people are spending money, it's going into the owners of the businesses, and obviously the people that own the businesses are constantly taking all these wins. They own all the assets. The assets are increasing in value. It's like this big game of Monopoly. But fast forward to the end of the game where you've got one player who's got all the hotels and all of the properties, and the rest of the people are just trying to survive, rolling the dice, and not afford to land on any of this rich bastard's properties. But that's just really what's kind of happened on a global scale. So those millionaires that are now no longer being, let's say, aligned with the values of this new Britain, they're going off to Dubai. They're going off to the US. They're going over to other countries where they can now, using, again, we love this, I like this new green team, your red team analogy, but they're going over to the green team, and they've spotted that there's a green team emerging in Dubai. There's a green team emerging in the US again. So I'm going to go there, and I'm taking my business, and you lot, you can all be a part of the red team here. And it just seems that, like you said, there's a change in the guard.
Yeah. And, so I think reform, they've picked on a lot of these pain points, and Jesus has a lot of them. I mean, one of the other main ones was the amount of money they're spending on net zero. And, believe it or believe it not, it's a massive hot point on net zero. And I was just saying to you, earlier that we spend £30 billion per year on net zero. Now, if you were to divide that up and split it between, let's use something like schools, because everyone can relate to schools. So if you were doing 15 billion for schools, on secondary schools, and 15 billion on primary schools, you'd be able to build about 800 secondary schools and about 2,500 primary schools for that sort of money. And for context, there's only 3,500 there or thereabouts secondary schools in the whole of England. So you can build, for half of the money spent on net zero per year, you can build about 40% of the amount, 30% of the schools, secondary in existence every single year. And it's like, so it's a hot topic as to what do we want to spend the money on. Now, there's graphs and things that have come out about, the world is 30% greener now than it was 10, 20 odd years ago, whatever it was. So, and that's like completely the opposite of what everyone was saying about climate change. And it is a bit, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it does exist. I'm just saying those are some facts. Probably need to look into it.
It definitely exists. I mean, nobody's denying that climate change isn't happening, but there's a multitude of reasons. Now, with what you're saying and the reality of where we're at is people are having to pay taxes to fund the ideology or the mission that each political party is on. And at the minute we're in a Labour government, and clearly Mr. Starmer is utilising the money that hard-working individuals, millions of us, are contributing towards this tax pot. And you either like what he's spending the money on or you don't. Now, there's always going to be corruption. There's always going to be people wasting. And the reality is, you've got a guy in Keir Starmer who's prioritising the immigrants, or how we feel it. See, the current media and the narrative is pushing that he's prioritising those people. He's certainly not prioritising the pensioners, certainly not prioritising the farmers. He's saying he's prioritising the NHS, and he's bringing that queue down. But again, we hear stories all the time of people that are getting terrible choice of healthcare. The queues aren't necessarily coming down, but I don't know, we need to have a look at the data as to whether that's actually happening. But reforms come through, and he's saying, I want to allocate the hard-working taxpayers' money to go towards the things that I'm listening to them on the streets. And they're saying, this is what we want. We want better education. We want to improve the roads. We want better infrastructure. We want to be paying less in tax. We want to be paying for things that we benefit, or we see the benefit in our communities, rather than giving it all away to Ukraine, giving it all away to foreign aid, giving it all away to these other countries and these other people that are coming in. And no one's saying that as a country we shouldn't be helping the world at large and the people around us. But I think what's happened for the other parties is that they've gone so far into prioritising everybody that's not Britain. Nigel and the Reform Party have come in and said, we're putting Britain first. And I'm sorry to say, but for a period of time, screw you lot, because we've got our own problems, and that's what Donald Trump's done. And that's why he's won by a majority landslide in the most recent election, because he's gone, make America great again. Now, love him or hate him, he won by a landslide off the back of the message of put America first. And I don't know why we've all of a sudden ended up in this mental attitude, this mental mindset of, well, we'll watch the UK crumble and burn, but as long as everybody else is all right, that's fine. We'll give all of our money away to Ukraine. We'll give all of our money away to foreign aid. We'll give all of our money away to other people and these immigrants that are coming in that might need refuge. They might. But so does so many people in this country that are absolutely on their arse right now. What about help for them? And that is genuinely why we've seen such a landslide victory in these by-elections for Reform, because he's the only person that's come in and been brave enough to say, screw you lot, not having it. Britain first. And so far it's working.
Proof's in the pudding. But the thing is, and I love the one that says, if your house is burning down, you don't then go and try and put a fire out on your neighbour's house. You need to take the fire out of your own house and put that out first before you start then trying to put out other people's fires, because you're not going to be able to. Again, you can liken it to an aircraft. Hopefully it never does, but if the aircraft is ever going down, you put your own oxygen mask on first, and then you help everyone else. You don't put everyone else's oxygen masks on first and then put your own on. You gotta focus on sorting and prioritising your own problems first, and then you can help other people.
100%. And this is where we've unfortunately landed ourselves now, where there's this such toxic mindset towards the UK government and the UK as a whole. How many people, and whether you were on the side of the Conservatives or you're on the side of Labour, we've, for the first time in 100 years, or since the Conservatives sort of came in, where there was just two parties. That was it. It was, you're either Conservative or you're Labour, and you're somewhere in the middle, you're Green or you're Lib Dem.
Yeah.
But the reality is they were never, ever going to win, ever, an election. And for the first time ever, we've got a party with Reform that have gone, enough is enough, Britain first, British people first, and it's time for change. Now, I'm not saying that the other mindset of helping others, giving back, helping those that are struggling around the world, not just in this country, isn't something that I also care about, but there needs to be a priority put onto us as people first, and that is where he is seeing so much success with what he's doing. But again, I also don't understand how people can have such a blind faith towards this mindset of, oh, right, well, we need to just help everybody, but not with the understanding that you can't help everybody. There has to be a sacrifice somewhere. We only have so much money. And the problem is, it's the amount of tax that the UK is generating. Last year was 820 billion pounds that the UK has claimed. Now, 5 to 10 years prior, that was at 500 billion, sorry. So it's gone up by 300 billion in the last 7-8 years. And they're recording that apparently, or they're estimating that this year it's going to be over £1 trillion that the UK will claim in tax. Now, my question is, where the hell are they spending it? Because I have not seen in the last 20 years, I would say, anywhere in this country, or most people in this country, turn around and say to one another, have you heard about so-and-so? Have you heard about this area? It's become really nice. They've done so much good stuff there. It's been redeveloped. It looks lovely now. It's been a great change, and we're all really happy here with the work and development that's gone on. I've not heard that. I've not heard it in 10 years. I've not heard it in 15 years. All I hear nowadays is people going, it's gone to shit. The community's gone to shit.
Potholes.
There's potholes everywhere. There's roadworks everywhere that takes years to complete. Nothing's being done. Everywhere's going out of business. Taxes are all-time high. Everybody's mindset towards the country is that it's an absolute disgrace. Nobody likes it here. Everybody wants to move. Everybody's complaining. Everybody's saying that they're not getting a fair share. Everybody's saying they're charging too much and getting nothing in return. And then there's this mindset towards, again, now obviously Reform's biggest one is the immigration and the current leadership and their foreign aid policies. People have finally got sick to death of it, and they're saying, I am no longer, and they're either moving or they're saying, I'm no longer living in a country or voting for a party that isn't putting me first and feels that they're being neglected.
Yeah. I mean, the problem that you've got is he's managed to cultivate and find out the pain of any patriotic person, but not even just patriotic people, just people that just feel like they've got nothing really to strive or look towards, because like you're saying, it does seem to just be getting worse, and the money just seems to be used in the places that no one actually wants it to be going. They all sort of need convincing that it's the right place to spend the money. Now, I really like one of Reform's ideas because, or the one that it was that we've all got a minimum threshold that we need to earn before we start paying tax on that money. At the moment, it's about 12,500. Now, one of the ideas was to increase that to about 20. So it'd mean that you got about $7,000 extra, the 30% odd tax you'd be paying on that saved. But what that also does is it will mean that the people that want to work, that are currently on benefits, are actually going to be better off coming out from benefits and then going into work. And what that does is it creates someone who's going to be even if they just earn 20 grand, which, it's not even minimum wage at the minute, so they would be earning more than that. But they go from, don't want to use the word drain, but someone that is really kind of like a drain on society to actually someone who's going to be paying into society and being a tax plus rather than a tax negative. And if you can get as many people as you can out of that camp into the positive camp, it's going to make a massive, massive difference and increase the amount of money that we've all got. So that's one of the massive ideas that I could see and I resonated with, and I thought, you know what, that's actually a really good idea, because I've seen programs on it, and I know they probably pick the best of the best, but some of these benefit shows where it was like they want to work, but they go, well, if I get out of work though, I'm going to be earning less money and I got the stress. It's like, I better just stay on benefits, to be fair. I'm just going to pay the party that is going to be more likely to keep me having the benefits. So it's not going to work.
I think there's just a general mindset shift that's happening. And unfortunately, you can either, as we said, building a team and building a country, you've got to have some discipline and you've got to have some non-negotiables. And unfortunately, we've become so liberal and so accepting of everything now, where there's this mindset of do what you want. And that's not how a country or a successful empire or a successful business or successful team can be ran. It needs to have a set of values and a set of non-negotiables and say, this is Britain, this is what we stand for. And if you look at some of the most popular emerging nations of the last 50 years, look at Dubai, look at the UAE, and look at what they've done. Look at what they've managed to build in such a small amount of time. China, a massive one. Look at what they have done in the last 5 decades. They have taken their really third world country, China. The poverty line in China was absolutely through the roof, and everyone there had barely enough to survive. And now you've got literally one of the world's leading superpowers, second only to the US, and even then there's questions and arguments around that. And they've managed to do it in such a small amount of time because they have followed a set of values, a set of non-negotiables, and a set of standards that they've put in place for a country. And they've said, if anybody doesn't like it, piss off. If you don't like what we stand for, leave. If you're going to try and break the values or break the law or break this set of standards, you will be punished severely, because that is the level of punishment required to these people that are coming in and breaking the laws, breaking these standards and breaking these non-negotiables. And there needs to be a deterrent to actually make people think and stop and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't stab someone. Maybe I shouldn't go and steal from someone. Maybe I shouldn't go and commit some of these heinous crimes that are out there, because the punishment is so extreme. It makes me actually think twice before I start creating or committing all these crimes and creating these problems for people. And in Dubai, you hear about how extreme it is. It's like, there was one story that was crazy to me, or crazy to us, where somebody got caught with a vape pen that had THC in, or there was, it was a weed pen, and they got 25 years in jail. Now, Dubai and the UAE operates a zero tolerance drug policy. And doesn't mean it doesn't happen out there, but the reality is zero tolerance. Now, we also claim to have a zero tolerance drug policy. Drugs are illegal in this country, yet you can see all these people getting caught dealing drugs, selling drugs, caught with drugs, or anything of the sort, and it's a slap on the wrist. It's nothing. So they go, well, I might as well do it then. There's no deterrent, there's no punishment, so I might as well. And they are then sort of creating the problems with the values that are set in stone, because we're just so lax with caring enough to actually uphold the values. And I go back to what I said earlier in the podcast. We had people not 100 years ago dying on the shores of Normandy, dying in Germany, dying across Europe to uphold a set of values. And now we're not even willing to fight for them, when people are literally on our shoreline here failing to uphold the values and completely destroying them, and we're just letting it happen in front of our very eyes.
Well, the government's meant to do, a few things. Meant to allocate the resources correctly, look after the people, and, create opportunity within the country. Now, looking after the people, that means that we can't bring people in that are going to cause damage. If someone walks into your house unannounced and starts just smashing shit up, or like cooking their own dinner, you're like, excuse me, what are you doing? They're like, and then you try and kick them out, and then you get prosecuted for kicking someone out that was just destroying your house. You're not going to be best pleased. But that's essentially what's happening.
Do you know what the thing that upsets me more than anything, and this is this crazy mindset, is everyone's all inclusive until they're the ones that have to fund or be immediately inclusive of things. So one of the best ones I ever saw, and it's brilliant, some of these videos. And look, it works both ways for so many different ideologies. 100% I get it. So it's not always black and white. There's a yin to every yang, etc. But the whole Ukraine refugee crisis was happening. And I remember it really distinctly, where people were petitioning and protesting outside of probably number 10 or somewhere in London, where they're saying, we need to allow Ukrainian refugees to come to this country and give them refuge and help them. Now, no one's saying that that's not the case, that you shouldn't do that, because it's humanitarian aid. We should be able to help people. So anyway, this one guy has gone into the crowd of people who are protesting to allow these Ukrainian refugees in. And this is where they're so short-minded and short-sighted, because yes, it's all well to say we need to support this particular agenda, which no one would argue, let's not support Ukraine. That's just ridiculous. Everybody wants to support Ukraine, but it's whether it's feasible and at what cost, because everything has to be funded or paid for. So anyway, the question was asked, would you like to bring one of the refugees into your home? And their faces went from being incredibly supportive of this, let the Ukrainians in, to, well, I wouldn't have one in my home. No, I couldn't even get their words out. And it was all these excuses that started coming. Oh, I can't, I rent. No, I wouldn't be able to. I haven't got enough room. Oh, no, I wouldn't be able to. Oh, sorry. And it's like, well, where do you expect
someone
them
else is
to,
there?
where do you expect them to go then? Who do you expect to pay for it? Oh, well, I didn't think that far. I just thought I'd come out here with my cardboard sign and shout out like a dickhead with no actual plan or no actual way of supporting what you're saying. And that's unfortunately the reality of all these people nowadays. They're so virtuous and they're all so, self-righteous that they're the best people in the world because they're saying, oh, let's cure cancer. It's like, well, yeah, we all would love to do that, but it's not like we could just do it at the click of our fingers and get it done overnight. There has to be a plan put in place. And I wish sometimes that even with the current mindset towards stop the boats, it's like, well, there has to be a plan. And I remember with the whole thing with Labour where Rishi was arguing with him saying, well, what's your plan to do any of these things? And he'd just bumble back and say, well, it's your fault, you caused this. And he's like, yeah, but what are you going to do to fix it? Well, let's not forget Conservatives have created. And it's like, you haven't come up with a plan, and that's the thing.
Smash the gangs.
Yeah.
Going to smash the gangs, whatever that means.
I just wish someone competent would come through with an actual plan to talk about how they're going to make improvements happen, because unfortunately, there's too many people saying a lot of rubbish nowadays and not enough people coming through with an actual plan.
Yeah. Well, one of the final ones for me is that Ant Middleton is running to be Mayor of London. And, he kind of likens all the things to, the military, where he's like we were saying pretty much that, you've got your team and you've got your camp. And he goes, and to sustain that camp, you can only let people that come in that you trust, that are going to work hard, that all align to the values of that camp. So if someone comes into the camp and doesn't want to put the work in, it's not going to work. And he's said that, he wants to try and become London mayor and be able to run London like an SAS camp. Now, I, for one, think that would be, a one way of being able to sort all the knife crime and all that crap out. And I think he's got more chance of doing it than anyone else, especially with his sort of pedigree. I mean, that man, if anyone's ever seen that program, SAS Who Dares Wins, yeah, imagine that behind the desk in London.
Yeah, he's not someone you'd want to mess with.
No.
But he's again, like sometimes, he's a leader, and sometimes leaders have to make difficult decisions. And unfortunately, this is where the British public are unfortunately quite bad, in fact, very bad at ostracising anybody that makes the wrong decision or has to make a tough decision, and that's the reality. You're never going to please everyone. You can please some of the people some of the time. You are never going to please all of the people all the time. I just wish people had a bit more of a broader mindset towards decisions that had to get made and try to be on board with them and understanding that it's a this way or that way. You can't do both. And unfortunately, certainly at the minute where the country's on its arse, we have to be a bit more particular about what we're doing, who we're helping and how we're doing it. So I think that would be us for this one. I just would ask everybody that's watching to just try and have a bit more of an open mind when it comes to certainly the political state of the country, certainly the area, but also remember that you are uniquely responsible and solely responsible for your own surroundings. You're responsible for your own success. You're responsible for your family, your friends, and your own little society of people that you've created. And try to be a little bit more open-minded when you're understanding that these things are quite nuanced. And whether you're Reform, Labour, Conservative, whatever it is, there's this mindset shift towards if you're one, you can't be the other. And I think everybody just needs to be a little bit more open-minded. Take a bit more control, a bit more accountability of your own surroundings, and let's see what happens in the future. I'm excited to see a bit of a change in the country, and hopefully we can have a bit more of a Britain first mindset. But as I said, stick around. We obviously usually do business content. All of this political landscape does affect businesses throughout the country, so it's something that we're definitely keeping an eye on. But I hope you enjoyed something a little bit different with us today. Remember to like and comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.